All right, we're in part two of a series, and kind of an odd name for a series, but the name of the series is called Christian. And of course, at first glance, when we think about Christian, we think, well, of course, that's what it's all about. That's what we are. But we looked into last week how. And I find this very odd, but we looked in last week how the disciples, the followers of Christ, never referred to themselves as Christian. And we can even nail it down when they first started applying the term to disciples, and of course that was in Antioch, and we found out that the term Christian was given to them almost as satire. It was a derogatory term. The emperors of the day had a habit of kind of assigning nicknames to subsets of society, and whenever a subset rose to the top where they became notable, like something's going on here, this is a bunch of, and if they didn't know exactly what they were, they'd give them a nickname, and they knew that they had something to do with Jesus Christ. They didn't understand that Christ was a title. It meant Messiah. It was a title, not his last name. And so they said, okay, they're followers of this Christ guy, and we'll call them Christians. And it was kind of a nickname, right? But the fact is the secular history and even the early fathers oftentimes called themselves members of the Way. That's what it was called, the Way. All right, and of course the nickname was given to them from outsiders, but everyone else was calling them the Way. And then when we look in scriptures and we find out where Christian was used 3 times, all right. That's it. That's all. Every time it was used, and all 3 times, one was a king saying, "Almost you persuaded me to be one of these weirdos." Okay, Christian. And the next time Peter said, "Don't be ashamed," and use the word, when you suffer for being a Christian. In other words, that derogatory term that yes, we are. So wear this terminology, proudly. You are Christians, all right? And so Peter was kind of using it in the sense of, in the context of, they're trying to embarrass us, and we can't be embarrassed by the cross of Christ. And so those are the times, and then of course the time where it says, they were first called Christians in Antioch. But the term they used the most was disciple, and it was kind of a terrifying term almost, because with a Christian, you're not real sure what that means today. A lot of people think they do, but when you figure out in your own mind that, I'm not just a Christian. Yes, in this culture, people have labeled me Christian. I said a prayer. I gave my life to Christ, and they call me a Christian. But when we change our mindset that we're a Christian to we're a disciple that's a pupil. That's the person who studies a person. They follow a person. They when the person says this is the things we ought to do, the answer is yes before the questions even the commands even out there. I'm a disciple of Christ, and so the problem is with the modern day usage of the word Christian. The problem is people on the outside, there's certain expectations when they know you're a Christian. I go to church. Oh, you're a Christian. Oh, I got born again. I asked Christ into my heart, and He became my Savior. And oh, you're a Christian. The outside world has certain expectations. And they may not agree with what they know you believe something, but they know that, with the title Christian, you need to behave a certain way or talk a certain way. That's what the outside world looks at you, and they have these expectations of what a Christian is, and they may not even really know what that looks like, but they know when you don't live up to it. Okay? So they don't know exactly what a Christian, what it means, but they know when you're not it. And they are not, they're not shy to bring that up. When I was in Bible college, I worked with a great bunch of guys. Honestly, as far as, buddies go, they were a great bunch of guys. We worked in a warehouse. I drove a fork truck on second shift. Early morning hours was dedicated to Bible college. And then I ran home, changed clothes, ran back to the warehouse. And I worked with these bunch of guys. But I'm telling you now, the warehouse community, it's rough. Okay, I mean, it is rough. The guys that didn't have a bottle of booze underneath the seat of their, they had a bong. I mean, that was the warehouse. Great. We had a great time. But anyway, no. All right. So anyway, it was kind of rough, right? And we were called in to have a planning meeting. So anytime you're called in off the fork truck, it's good time, right? You just get to kill a little time. And so we were called in. We're going to have a planning meeting. They're going to have a Christmas party, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to Bible college. This Christmas party is probably not a place for me, There was one particular guy at the warehouse, and he could not articulate a sentence without using, vulgarity. It was just him, right? You get used to that stuff in that environment. All right, so every other word was just filthy. It was, and everybody knew him, and he's kind of obnoxious. I don't know. You probably still work with him. I don't know, but he's just one of those guys that and so anyway, we're making these plans, and they're trying to decide when we can have the Christmas party. Okay, second shift. Can we, and the company was in on it. They were just like, yeah, we'll be sure and schedule a light day in the last half of the day. So from 8 o'clock at night till midnight, this will be our designated Christmas party. And they're like, yeah, you're going to have a keg and all this and that. And I'm like, can I get off early that day? I'm just, they all knew I was in Bible college, right? This obnoxious guy said, oh, no, we can't have it then. And they said, what do you mean we can't have it then? Said, I got choir practice at church. And I'm like, shut up. You are the most vulgar person, And so when the meeting broke up, a couple guys come to me, new as a Bible college student, and they were like, can he do that? I said, do what? Sing in a choir? He is a jerk. And I say, so, what I'm saying? They, if you are a Christian, they know when you're not. They may not know what you believe. They may not know how you behave. They may not know, but they know when you aren't. So that's the problem in today's terminology when we think of the word Christian. So when we think of the word Christian, we as Christians or disciples of Christ, when we people on the inside use the terminology Christian, then in our minds, if we're just a Christian, we're not disciples, we're just a Christian, then everything becomes relative. In other words, disciples it's kind of a step up as far as following Christ. Because if you think, I believe a certain thing, I said a prayer, and I think there ought to be a time when, and you must have a time Not there ought to be. You must have a time when you just surrender your life to Christ. You know you cannot save yourself. Your works will not get you to heaven. You just need to surrender your life to Jesus Christ. Accept Him as your Savior. He's the only one that can save you from your sin. Not just individual sins, but your sin in general, your sin nature. He can save you. You've got to have that. So yeah, when I say, you said a prayer and now you're a Christian, I'm not belittling that. That is exactly, but it's that heartfelt surrender that makes us disciples. But if we just see ourselves as Christian, then yeah, it becomes relative. I'm a Christian because this person didn't say a prayer. I did say a prayer. And there's denominations that, I'm a Christian because my parents had me baptized, and they didn't have their kids baptized. And you can kind of see where I'm a Christian because, I go to church on holidays, in some circles, that's all that's required. Maybe you're thinking, I go every week. I go once a month. I'm a Christian. So everything kind of becomes relative, even on the inside. And it gets kind of complicated, But let me clarify the command, what it really looks like to be a disciple. Okay? This shall all men know. All men know what? Back here, okay? All men know what? This is how they know. See, when the warehouse group looked at a guy, they didn't know this guy was, he's singing in the choir for the Christmas cantata. It's like, and I'm like, just shut up, man. Don't tell anybody you're a Christian. But it said, by this shall all men know that you're my disciples. Disciples. These are real followers of Christ. This shall all men know that you're disciples. How do they know that? If you love one another. Now, one of the things that we do here at the cross is our mantra, our motto is love God and love people. And one of the problems with that we have to stop and reiterate it occasionally, is because it almost gets cliche. But this is one of the biggest commandments in the New Testament, is that you love one another. It is our trademark. It is. Here's the thing. When Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you're my disciples, if you love one another, it is the most important thing that Jesus could leave with us. Now, I want to talk to the men for a second. So women, don't get up and leave, okay? But hang in there. But I'm going to talk to the men just for a second. Because here's the thing. If you are, the macho type, they even use that terminology anymore. Where's Boo at? No, they don't use that terminology. Yeah, okay. Do you know what I mean when I say if you're the macho guy? Okay. If you're the man's man, you're kind of a, no nonsense. Maybe, certain personalities have a problem when you say, what, we all just need to love each other, because we get this preconceived idea, I guess it is. And we've seen these paintings of Jesus and he's standing like a femme. Can I use that word? I used it, all right? He's standing like a femme and he's just, and he's, and so we have this idea in our head that when a guy says we need to love one another, that he's some sort of sissy or something, right? So what men, I want you to think just for a moment, who said that? It wasn't the sissy standing guy that we see in those portraits hanging on, on the walls of certain churches. This was a guy who traveled by foot most of his life. With very few exceptions, he rode animals. But he traveled by foot most of his life up and down the hills of Judea, all day long. This is a guy that slept outside most of the time. I go camping for a week and I'm done with it. I want my mattress. This guy slept outside most of the time, walked up and down the hills of Judea, and that was his lifestyle. This is a guy who marched into Jerusalem knowing he was about to die. And he knew the kind of death that he was going to go through. This guy, as he was growing up, no doubt he saw crucifixions. He saw the roads lined with people hanging on crosses. And he knew he was going to that type of a death. And he also knew, according to the Old Testament scripture, that they were going to beat him severely beyond the recognition of a man before they hung him on that cross. He knew that, and he walked into Jerusalem anyway. Gentlemen, you wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that, but he did that. That guy said, love one another. Not a sissy Fimmy. That's not Jesus. This was a man's man. This was a man that took on the sins of the world on his shoulders and did it willingly. So, Jesus he's getting ready to march into Jerusalem. And he's telling them, love one another, right? And he's saying that because he's trying to prepare them for what's about to happen. They're about to go through the worst 3 or 4 days of their life, and he knows that. And so he gets them all together, and he knows he's just about to go into the lion's den, and he's going to get ripped apart there. But he knows that, you know what, guys, let's get together, and there's some last minute instructions, and so I want you to love one another. And if you realize who said it, and you want to know what Jesus meant by what Jesus said, then see what Jesus did. If you want to know what Jesus meant by what Jesus said when he said love one another, watch what he does. Okay? He goes in John 14:1, he goes in and he says this, let not your hearts be troubled. He knows they're just about to go through the worst weeks of their life. And he says, you believe in God, believe also in me. Because in the next few days, you're going to think that it was all a joke, that we got it all wrong, that I wasn't the Messiah, that how could the Messiah die? You're going to be if you believe in God, which the answer would be, of course we do, then believe also in me. Because just though they hang me on the cross, it's a temporary situation, I will rise again. Now, he doesn't get that blunt, and he doesn't get that he doesn't spell it out that well, but he knows what they're about to go through, and he just says, okay, I'm about to leave. Everybody gather in. I want, last minute instruction here, just so you guys don't all fall apart when it all comes down to this betrayal, to this, just everybody, listen up. I want to give you some last minute instructions. And he says this. Next slide, Ash. There we go. He says this, a new commandment I give you. Now, I want you to put yourself, here's the backdrop. The backdrop to this a new commandment I give you. They're all sitting there, and they just got done with the Passover. They had this big feast, this wonderful time, and their anticipation, their expectations are very, very high because they know something's going to happen. They know this, right? What they think is going to happen is Jesus is going to take over. They think he's going to take over, the temple. he'll end up being the high priest, and James and John are hoping that one's on the left and one's on the right, and Peter's mad at them because they want but they know there's going to be a revolution. They think it's going to be a revolt is coming, and they're going to be in on it, and they know it's okay because he's the Messiah. And Jesus is all of a sudden, he's talking like this ain't going to go good. This is not going to be anything you expected. So I'm going to give you a new commandment. And their pushback probably was, we're Jews. We got 630 some commandments. We don't need one more. We understand what a commandment is. Don't give us one more. We got all we need. Even the 10 biggies, the 10 commandments, that's all we need. All right, not one more. But he says, no, guys, you're going to need this. So here's a new commandment. This is the key to your future. This is what will help you through those hard times. And this is it. A new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you. That's it. Forget all the other commandments. Just focus on this one. If you do the 10, you'll have a great society, and all societies should be based off the 10, and that's fine. Whatever, you do those by nature, and you do those just, because you're a moral person. But here's your one thing that you need to remember, the one commandment before I go. Love one another. And keep in mind the guy who said that. Love one another was a man that was about to march into Jerusalem and be tortured and crucified. And he's telling them, as I have loved you. And they can remember. When Peter flew off the handle and Jesus said, it's all right, Peter. Forget it. Come on, John, James, John, sons of thunder, troublemakers. Right? Won't you follow me? Matthew, nobody likes you. You're a tax collector. So that's still true today. Nobody likes you, but I'll take you in. Nathaniel, you ditched my hometown. Can any good thing come out of Nazareth? I'm a good thing. So I looked past and looked over and let you grow into the men you are today. You love other people that way, the way you've been loved. So he gives them a new commandment. And they're thinking, part of that pushback, wait a minute, what about the revolution? What about the revolt? What about putting the high priests, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees? What about putting them in their place? They've been trying to trap you for 3 years in your words. They've been there against you. They've got a contract out on you. What about the fight? And Jesus says, forget all that. Love one another. You want to be my disciple? Love one another. And what that looks like. Forget everything else, but just love one another. Look at verse 35. By this shall all men know that you're my disciples. Not that you're Christian. Awful generic term. People don't know what that looks like. They only know what it looks like when you don't do it. But if you're going to be a disciple, you're going to be able to love one another as I've loved you. So, by this shall all men know that you're my disciples if you have loved one another. I know as men, sometimes we have a hard time throwing around that word love, but love is not just emotions. Love is an action. If you do the correct actions, emotions will come along. When I've had, in my office, I've done counseling, and honestly, sometimes they've just quit doing the actions and wonder where the emotion went. When you do the actions, the emotions come. So you have to love one another. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a mushy, feely thing. It's an action. Now, John, I'm going to give you the backdrop to John. Man, you guys are horrible. I'm going to give you the backdrop to John. Okay, we'll pick that up next week, okay? Because John was there when Jesus gave that last command. And John saw and experienced everything that happened to Jesus. One of the few disciples that didn't scatter was John. He was at the foot of the cross with Mary, Jesus' mother. And the backdrop to John, it's 55 years later. John's an old man. Okay? He's seen it all. John, was part of the inner circle. And that inner circle was James, John, and Peter, right? They were the closest ones to Jesus. And when Jesus was betrayed and went through, and then he resurrected, and they understood. They finally understood. This is not going to be a physical fight. This is not going to be a physical war. This is a spiritual thing, and that we are to go into all the world and preach the gospel. So John has been a part of all of that. But it's 55 years later. Now, John's, like I said, he's seen it all, and he was charged by Jesus while Jesus hung on a cross. One of his last words was, "John, take care of my mom." Now, tradition tells us that you can go to Ephesus and find where John and Jesus' mom Mary, where they lived. They had a rented apartment there. Of course, now it's a shrine, and so he did, he obeyed the command of Jesus. But as you might go and talk to John, and you might say, John, what's it all about? What is this Christianity thing about? What is this? Oh, okay, John, sorry about that. What's this disciple thing all about? And John may, they say, we need to love one another. And you might seriously just say, John, are you serious? I mean, did you hear what happened to Peter? Yeah, I heard. He was crucified upside down. Did you hear what happened to Paul? Yeah. They took him outside of the city of Rome and beheaded him. What about Matthew? Did you hear Matthew got burned at the stake? Yeah, I heard that. So here John is, 55 years later. He's an old man. He's in his 90s. And they're saying,